Hello and welcome to Unacademy IAS English, a one-stop destination for the English medium civil services aspirants. A very good morning and welcome to the most comprehensive Hindu analysis on YouTube. So let's begin today's discussion by first looking at the topics that we are going to discuss. In today's newspaper, we have plenty of important articles. So I have chosen a total of 11 important articles for a detailed and comprehensive analysis so that you don't have to go back and read the newspaper again. So let's begin. But before that, I have three very important announcements and I want all of you to pay attention for a couple of minutes. Those of you who are preparing for the upcoming prelims, especially if you're looking to revise all the big subjects at the last minute, we are running the final revision series, not just to cover the static portion and the concepts, but also the related current affairs with practice MCQs. These are one-shot marathon sessions which are going on. We've already completed history and economy, but today Mukesh sir will be taking up a marathon session on geography, which would also cover important places that were in news, map-related questions, and a lot of PYQs as well. This marathon session will start at 2 p.m. today and the live stream is available on our YouTube channel. So please open the live stream, set the reminder, and ensure that you attend this class. This would be the best and easiest way for you to revise this critical subject from where you can expect a lot of questions in the upcoming prelims exam. The next announcement I have is not for 2025 aspirants, it is for 2026 aspirants. See, Unacademy has launched its dream project, Unacademy Platinum. This is a program under which students will not only get the chance to interact with their teachers, keep the cameras on, and almost get the experience of an offline class. This is an opportunity for you to get personal mentorship and guidance and personal hand holding by the educators themselves, not just by mentors, but by the educators, where you would be handheld, mentored, and guided throughout your preparation. And this would include solving your doubts apart from the live classes. It would include answer evaluation as well. And it would give you access to super mentors who would be serving officers or retired officers who are already experienced in this domain to provide you that required mentorship and guidance. So if you are someone who wants that additional push, if you basically want to be held accountable for your preparation and have a better experience in the online classroom, almost have an offline like experience to interact with the teachers, then Unacademy Platinum is the best platform for you. So this batch has just started yesterday, but you have an opportunity to experience Unacademy Platinum absolutely free of cost for the next 4 classes. So today, tomorrow, day after, and also on the 16th, 13th to 16th of May, you can attend platinum classes free to experience how a platinum session would feel like. So this is absolutely free and the class goes live at 7 p.m. in the evening. So to attend these free classes, all you have to do is click on the link provided in the video description. Now, finally, I have one more announcement, and this is for 2025 aspirants who are preparing for the upcoming prelims exam. Recently, India carried out civil defense mock drills. Why? Because as India-Pakistan tensions were increasing and there was anticipated military strikes from Pakistan, to prepare our civilian population for the impending strikes, India carried out nationwide mock drills, especially with focus on the border areas. The whole idea was to practice, to prepare, so that you are prepared for any eventuality. So similarly, UPSC aspirants need to practice and prepare before your actual battle begins on the 25th of May. So Unacademy is offering you this opportunity to attempt full-length mock question papers of GS and as well as CSAT from 13th to 18th of May. This again is a free initiative to help all the aspirants out there. So please take a look at the schedule. And you can attend these free mock papers and the link for the same is provided in the video description box below. With this, let's get started. Now, also note, if you want the PDF of this session, You can join my Telegram channel by scanning the QR code. I'll be sharing the PDF over here. So let's begin the discussion and let's talk about Prime Minister Narendra Modi's address yesterday that was delivered to the nation at a critical point. Following the ceasefire between India-Pakistan and the successful military outcome of India's Operation Sindoor, the Prime Minister addressed the nation yesterday at 8 p.m. and delivered a very, very strong message, especially to Pakistan and to those entities who are involved in sponsoring terrorism against India. So, analyzing the Prime Minister's speech is very essential, very important, because during the speech, the Prime Minister brought out a new doctrine that India would apply against Pakistan sponsored terrorism. The Prime Minister did not mince any words, he did not hold back. He directly blamed Pakistan as a state sponsorer of terrorism, attributing the terror attacks against India, including the Pahalgam attack, the Pulwama attack, or the 2611 attacks, and linking them with Pakistani state actors. The Prime Minister stated that India has zero tolerance for terrorism that emanates from the soil of another country. So this is a very strong message that has gone out from, from the leadership, from the political leadership of the country. And this hits the right notes, the right places. It's a message to the Pakistani military establishment, to the deep state of Pakistan, which is involved in sponsoring these non-state actors. So while delivering this message, the Prime Minister laid out a new doctrine for India. So this is where I would pick up an article from the Indian Express. I want to expand the discussion here, not just stick to the Hindu, go beyond the Hindu as well. The Indian Express has reported that the Prime Minister has essentially laid out a new three-step doctrine that India would be applying to deal with Pakistan-sponsored terrorism. So what is this new doctrine? Let's understand this. See, Operation Sindoor was without a doubt a new threshold that India has created to retaliate against Pakistan-sponsored terrorism. India has shown a new path that using conventional military options, we can strike Pakistan, hit terror targets, and even if required, military targets in Pakistan for the sub-conventional war it is waging against India. When I say sub-conventional war, I'm referring to the sponsorship of non-state actors. How Pakistani state agencies, such as its intelligence agency, the ISI, and the army military establishment, how they are backing, sheltering, and supporting terrorist groups against India. So this linkage between state and non-state actors, this covert proxy war of Pakistan against India, is a type of sub-conventional warfare. So India in the past would always hesitate to use conventional military option against Pakistan out of the fear that the conflict could escalate, go beyond control, and could possibly reach the nuclear threshold. Because Pakistan would often blackmail India using the nuclear umbrella. Pakistan would often say that if India attacks Pakistan in case of terror attacks using conventional military strikes, then Pakistan would not hesitate to retaliate against India using nuclear weapons. So this dilemma had always kept our leadership on tenterhooks, on the edge. So right now, India has established a new normal. A new normal has been created. A new threshold has been laid down by India. In fact, India started doing this in an incremental, step-by-step manner. After the Uri attacks of 2016, India carried out surgical strikes. After Pulwama attacks in 2019, India retaliated with Balakot airstrikes. These were one-off strikes, hoping that it would be a strong deterrent against Pakistan. But as you can see, it did not deter Pakistan's misadventures against India and its obsession to target India and bleed India through 1,000 cuts. So post-Pahalgam attack, there was a need for a much stronger and a much comprehensive response against Pakistan. So India decided to climb the escalation ladder because Pakistan carried out the first escalation with the Pahalgam attack. The Pahalgam attack was the first trigger for India. So India had to respond. And India launched Operation Sindoor to specifically hit terrorist targets in Pakistan. So we did not target military sites or civilian targets. We only hit the terror infrastructure in Pakistan, including critical centers, the headquarters of Lashkar at Muridke, headquarters of Jaish-e-Mohammed at Bhavalpur, and other camps across Pakistan and Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. So when Pakistan responded to this and retaliated against Indian military sites and civilian targets, India climbed one more step on the escalation ladder and we took the battle right to the heart of the enemy, striking critical military targets in Pakistan, including strategic air bases. So, this escalation, which India has shown within the nuclear threshold, has basically created a new normal for India. A new threshold has been set up, and we have basically called the bluff of Pakistan's nuclear blackmail. Pakistan would often protect itself, shield itself with the nuclear umbrella, and it would blatantly use terrorism against India as a sub-conventional weapon against India. But now India has said enough is enough. India would no longer take this lying down. Despite the risks associated with such a conflict, India will climb this escalation ladder, but this would be proportionate and non escalatory. We will not seek escalation, but if there is an escalation from Pakistan, it would be responded from India in equal measure, with equal focus, and in a proportionate manner. If there is a terror attack, we'll again hit terror camps in Pakistan. If Pakistan escalates and strikes our civilian or military targets, we will also hit Pakistani military and civilian targets if necessary. This new normal, which has been created, is called the bluff of Pakistan with regard to the nuclear blackmail. And that is what the Prime Minister stated. So, this is a clear new policy that India has laid out, a new doctrine. It's a doctrinal shift, a paradigm shift in India's approach to deal with Pakistan sponsored terrorism. The next big point that was raised by the Prime Minister was that India will no longer distinguish between state and non state actors. We will treat an act of terror as an act of war. The usage of terrorism against India would be considered as warfare, even if it is carried out by a non state entity, by a terrorist group like Lashkar or Jaish or any other terror group. If it is based out of a certain country, if it is being supported, sponsored by the government of a certain country, we will hit the state actors as well, which means we will strike at Pakistan's sovereignty, territorial integrity. We will declare Pakistan's military targets as legitimate targets in case of a terror attack against India. So, this again is a new doctrine that India is bringing out. An act of terror will be considered as an act of war and it would be appropriately responded in a proportionate manner. We will not only strike the non-state actors and the terror targets, we will also hit the state targets which are enabling, supporting and backing these terrorists. And finally, the last point that I want to make here. Prime Minister said that terrorism and talks cannot go together. Terrorism and trade cannot go hand in hand. And more importantly, blood and water cannot flow together. So what does this mean? It basically means India will not engage in any talks with Pakistan as long as terrorism continues against India. We will not discuss any other issue with Pakistan. We will not elevate our diplomatic ties. We will not talk about issues like Kashmir or Siachen or Sir Creek, the boundary issues that we have. We will not cooperate with Pakistan on any other matter. The only thing which will be discussed, if at all it is discussed, would be the issue of terrorism, along with the question of POK, Pakistan occupied Kashmir or Pakistan occupied Jammu and Kashmir. So this is again a very strong statement and a new doctrine that India is placing in front of Pakistan. There won't be talks as long as terrorism will continue. If at all we will talk, we will only talk about terrorism and POK, nothing else. And trade will not be resumed. Trade will not continue, which also means cultural ties will also not be reinstated as long as terrorism continues against India. We will be suspending every other aspect of our relationship. And the only relationship that we will focus upon would be to discuss about terrorism and to discuss about POK. Then finally, blood and water will not flow together, which means despite the ceasefire, India will not revoke its decision to keep the Indus Water Treaty in abeyance. The Indus Water Treaty was a generous offer from India as a gesture of goodwill back in 1960, given Pakistan's dependency on the Indus waters. But now India has made it clear that if Pakistan is bleeding Indians, if it is making the blood of Indians flow through terrorism, slaughtering Indians through brutal, dastardly attacks, India will no longer allow water to flow into Pakistan, which means we will not abide by the commitments of the treaty. We have kept it in abeyance. We will not share the hydrological data with Pakistan. We are also already implementing short-term measures to increase the storage capacity on the western rivers, on Chenab and Jhelum, to cut off the flow of water into Pakistan, which could hit Pakistan's agriculture. We will plan projects in the medium to long term to increase the storage capacity on the Indian side so that we will fully utilize the allotted share to India. And this could further stop the flow of water into Pakistan. And if necessary, we will even divert the flow of water into Pakistan. So this policy of India will continue. The decision to weaponize water to punish Pakistan will continue as long as Pakistan will keep bleeding India. So this, I think, is a very, very important message, a strong message that has been delivered. So please note down these points. There can be a question based on this, a mains question. UPSC can ask you, what is India's doctrinal shift in dealing with Pakistan-sponsored terrorism? So you need to bring out these points, explain this from a conceptual perspective. I hope this is clear to everyone. Now, there's another update regarding these events. Yesterday, the DGMOs on both sides met. The Director General of Military Operations of India Pakistan held a meeting to discuss the progress and implementation of the ceasefire. So, as per the talks, both the sides have agreed to step back and pull back the troops that had been deployed into forward positions, especially along the land border. Both India and Pakistan had amassed a very large number of troops preparing for any eventuality leading to a war-like situation. So now India and Pakistan have agreed to take a step back and pull the troops back as well from the border areas. So this will go a long way to tone down the tensions. But another development was that Pakistan would never change. We saw that yesterday. Within minutes after the Prime Minister's speech, Pakistan again attempted a drone ingression into the Indian airspace. There were reports of several drones swarming towards Jammu sector and Punjab sector. Probably this was a message from Pakistan. Probably it was responding to the Prime Minister's speech. So most of these drones have been easily taken care of by our air defense, which has done a phenomenal job over the last few days. And we need to wait and watch how things will develop in the coming days. Because please remember, Operation Sindoor has not ended. Operation Sindoor is ongoing and it will continue as well. That's what India and the armed forces have confirmed. Because Indian armed forces will be on high alert for the next several days and weeks if at all Pakistan attempts any other misadventure. And even going forward, maybe several months later or a few years later, if Pakistan resorts to such misadventure through terror attacks or through military strikes, India will engage Pakistan and escalate things against Pakistan. So Operation Sindoor will be an ongoing operation for now. So this is what you need to understand from the key developments of yesterday. Now let's talk about something equally important that has taken place in the world of international relations and global economy. I'm sure all of you are aware of the tariff wars between US and China, which has been going on, especially since Donald Trump assumed power. So after Trump announced Liberation Day tariffs, he primarily targeted China with a tariff rate of 145%. China reciprocated, retaliated against these tariffs, and imposed around 125% tariffs against the products being exported from the US to China. Essentially, these tariffs, they would act as an embargo. They would act as a blockade. Because with such high tariffs, it doesn't make any economic sense to continue trade between the two countries. It would basically bring the export import between the two countries to a complete halt, to a grinding halt. So as a result, it created panic in the global economy, given that China is the world's largest manufacturer and the US is one of the biggest markets. US has a lot of dependency on Chinese goods and Chinese supply chains. China also has a lot of dependency on the American market. So if the trade were to come to a halt between the two largest powers and economies, it would obviously disrupt the global economy itself and global supply chains. So this is something that had worried the entire world. You might have seen how stock markets crashed in April, triggering fears of a global recession. So now, US and China, they have met in Geneva at a neutral location in Switzerland to talk about a trade deal in order to move away from this hostile position. So, in the preliminary round of talks, which has taken place yesterday, they have arrived at a temporary solution. They've worked out a temporary solution to cut the tariffs by 115% each. Immediately, both sides are pausing these high tariffs that they had levied against each other, and they've decided that as a temporary solution, they will immediately cut these tariffs by 115% each, which means US will continue to levy 30% tariffs against China, and China would levy 10% tariffs against the US. So this is a big relief for the global economy. They will continue these talks and they will work out a final trade deal in order to ensure that there is a fair arrangement, a level playing field for both the countries. These negotiations will continue in the coming days, and very soon they're expected to work out a final trade arrangement, which could bring some stability to the global economy. And if you recollect, India also was hit with these tariffs, these Liberation Day tariffs by the United States. But as of now, Trump administration has paused these tariffs for most countries, including India, but they are levying a baseline tariff of 10% for India as well. So India, US are also negotiating a trade deal in the coming days. India, US are working out a trade arrangement to keep stable tariff rates in order to ensure that each other's interests are protected. Now, how will this temporary arrangement between US and China affect India? Will it be positive for India or negative for India? Experts believe that this trade deal, which is being worked out between US and China, and the reduction in tariffs against China, it is a mixed bag for India. There are some advantages for India. There are some disadvantages for India as well. So let's understand this quickly. Very easy topic. Just pay attention. When US levied these high tariffs against China, 145% tariffs, what would happen? Basically, Chinese goods can no longer enter the American market. It would not be viable. Nobody would pay such a high price for Chinese goods. So, what will American consumers do? What will American companies procure and distribute to their consumers in the American market? Obviously, they will need supplies of these products and goods. So, essentially, what would happen was that if these tariffs continued against China and the trade war continued between US and China, India had an advantage in that. As they say, when two parties are fighting, a third party can benefit from that. So the US China trade war was in some way beneficial for India because it would channel the investments towards India. American investors, American manufacturing companies, which have manufacturing sites in China, they would relocate from China, shift to other destinations like India, Vietnam, etc. So this would have benefited India immensely. Manufacturing would have shifted to India, at least part of it, giving a significant boost to our exports, creating jobs in the Indian economy, bringing more FDI into the Indian economy. This would have been a benefit for India. But now that US China are working out a trade deal, and they've already announced a temporary pause and arrangement as well, and brought down the tariffs to 30 and 10%, this may not happen anymore. The shift of American manufacturing in China towards India may not happen. See, this is what we refer to as the China plus one strategy that many companies were being encouraged by their Western governments to follow, to shift manufacturing away from China, to move to other destinations, not just for economic reasons, for geopolitical reasons as well, because China is known to weaponize its trade advantages. So many companies were looking at China plus one to diversify their manufacturing into other countries like India, Vietnam, and others. But now this might take a hit if a trade deal is worked out and if the trade war comes to an end between US and China. So this could be disadvantageous for India. So that could be a drawback for us. On the other side, this trade deal and the normalization of trade relations between the two big powers will bring back stability in the global economy. It will help avoid a possible recession. It will arrest the chaos in the global economy. It will stabilize the global supply chains. And this is good for India, especially for some industries. Because see, India is dependent on a lot of critical imports. For example, in the pharmaceutical industry, almost 60% of the APIs, the active pharmaceutical ingredients, we import them from China. So the global chaos in the markets and the trade wars around the world would have affected our procurement of these APIs. And in turn, it would hit the pharmaceutical industry in the country. The same goes for automobiles, then gems and jewelry industry, and many other industries. They would have all been affected by the trade war, by the instability. So the trade deal, which will stabilize the global economy, is good news for India. Many industries will benefit from this. We can easily procure what we want and increase our exports as well. So it's a mixed bag for India. There are some advantages. There can be some disadvantages as well. Especially India would have benefited from American manufacturing shifting out of China. But now that may not happen. But still other opportunities will open up for other sectors and industries, which is still good news for India. So let's wait and watch for the final trade deal between US and China, and also the upcoming trade talks between India and the United States. So with this, let's move on to the next article. Now, before I start the next article, also please note what has happened with the stock markets yesterday. Two positive developments at the global level. So we have seen a massive surge, a rally in the global stock markets, including in the Indian stock markets. Because on one hand, India-Pakistan tensions have come to an end with the ceasefire and almost the implementation of the ceasefire as well. This was good news. It was read as a good news with the markets. And parallelly, the truce between US and China, the temporary tariff arrangement, along with the proposed final trade deal, it has calmed the nerves in the markets. So we saw a massive rally yesterday. Sensex and Nifty have seen one of the biggest jumps in recent times in a single day. So that tells you that some sense of normalcy is coming back into the global markets. Now let's look at the next article, which I think is very important. And this is something that all of you need to pay attention to. When India announced the ceasefire, and especially when Trump unilaterally announced that he had settled the conflict between India and Pakistan, and he equated India Pakistan, placed them on a same footing, and he claimed credit for mediating a ceasefire between the two sides, though India denies it. This created a lot of outrage in the country. Across India, people were outraged. On social media, you could see this. Some were outraged because they were hoping that the conflict will escalate and continue. They wanted it to continue because for a large population in the country, the goal was taking POK back from Pakistan. At least that is what the political rhetoric was from the ruling party. So several supporters of the government, they were disappointed. They were disappointed with the leadership, the decision to allow US to mediate and allow Trump to take credit and run with the narrative. So this led to a lot of anger and resentment. There were others who were disappointed as well for different reasons, given US alleged interference and the possible third party role and involvement between India, Pakistan, and the possible internationalization of the Kashmir issue. But those who were outraged with the government that the war didn't continue, that we didn't hit Pakistan harder, that we didn't take back POK from Pakistan when we had the opportunity, right? Those who believed this, those who were under this perception, some of them, they started attacking, trolling, and abusing the officials who were delivering the press briefings. Might have seen over the last 4 to 5 days, ever since Operation Sindoor began, the Ministry of External Affairs and Ministry of Defense have been conducting a joint press conference almost on a daily basis, which is led by India's Foreign Secretary, Vikram Misri. And he would be accompanied by two senior women commanders from the Indian Armed Forces, Vyomika Singh, Wing Commander Vyomika Singh from the Indian Air Force, and Colonel Sofia Qureshi from the Indian Army. They made a big splash. They made a big impact. They delivered powerful messages. They provided official briefs and statements as to what was happening in the ongoing standoff with Pakistan. So when everything was going well, the people of the country appreciated them, praised them. They became social media icons. But as soon as the ceasefire was announced, and especially when Trump claimed it, and when the supporters of the war and those who were anticipating that we would hit Pakistan even harder, continue the war, and maybe take back POK, they were disappointed, they were outraged, which is understandable because public sentiments, emotions matters as well. But some of them, they started abusing and trolling the very same officials who were standing for India, representing India. Vikram Misri, in particular, has been brutally trolled and abused, and a certain red line has been crossed by these social media trolls. He has received a lot of hate in his DMs. A lot of memes have been made, a lot of unnecessary anger has been directed at the Foreign Secretary of India. Not just that, his personal details have been exposed. His daughters have been targeted, abused by online trolls. Rape and death threats have been issued to his daughters and family members. Personal contact information of the family members of Vikram Misri has been leaked online by these trolls who are basically resorting to cyberbullying and doxing. These are two important terminologies that you need to understand: cyberbullying and doxing. Cyberbullying is essentially using internet platforms, online platforms like social media, to threaten someone, to bully, to intimidate someone, to harass and abuse someone with the intention to harm their reputation, with the intention to defame them and to threaten them. This is blatantly illegal. What is doxing? Have you heard of the term doxing? Doxing refers to a malified attempt to reveal personal information of individuals online, deliberately leaking someone's personal information, either by stealing it or by gaining unauthorized access to someone's personal information. It could be your phone number, it could be your home address, or it could be the details of your car and vehicles, the details of your family members. If someone gets hold of this personal information, right, and deliberately leaks it online, they reveal it online with a malified intent, with a wrong intention to defame them, to bully them, to threaten and intimidate them, and harass and abuse them. This attempt to reveal personal information online is known as doxing, which is also a illegal practice. It is a form of cyber threat. It's a threat to your privacy. Doxing is a threat to your personal data security and your personal right to privacy. So this is not something new across the world. We have seen that with the rise of social media over the last 2 decades, cyberbullying and doxing has become very common. There are several trolls and these bullies online, especially some extremists driven by ideological agendas, political or religious ideological agendas, who resort to such practices to build their narrative, to promote their extremist views, and in the process, they harm innocent individuals. Now, in this particular case, Vikram Misri is absolutely at not fault with what happened. If at all you're unhappy with the ceasefire, as a citizen, you have a right. Everybody in the country has a right for their view, their opinion. But you can't direct your outrage, your anger at government officials who are simply doing their job. Don't forget, Vikram Misri is India's senior most IFS officer, one of our finest diplomats, who has done an incredible service for India throughout his career. The same goes for the two women commanders from the armed forces who have bravely served India. If you look at Sofia Qureshi, she has led an all-women contingent of the Indian Army in a peacekeeping mission under the UN flag in the Democratic Republic of Congo, which is hit by a civil war. If you look at Yomika Singh, she has been a helicopter pilot, running multiple rescue missions, reconnaissance missions for the Indian Air Force. These officials who have served the country beyond what is expected from them, worked for the nation honestly, today have been targeted by these trolls, abused, harassed. They have been bullied online. They have been doxxed. Their private information has been leaked online to threaten them. Now, this is very serious. The decision to go for a ceasefire was a political decision taken by the government, taken by the political leadership in the larger interests of the nation. If at all you have questions, direct those questions to the government. Nobody has a right to target the officials for simply doing their mandated job. They are not at fault. They didn't decide that we should go for a ceasefire. They just carried out the task which was given to them. That is why across the country there has been sympathy, support, which has been rallied in favor of Vikram Misri and the other officials. Former diplomats, the entire IAS, IPS, IFS association, they've all come together, even politicians, ministers, all have come together to criticize the trolling and abusing which has taken place. So, this is actually a very important topic. In internal security, we have a separate chapter on social media, the misuse of social media. So topics like cyberbullying and doxing is an integral part of your syllabus. So how do we deal with this? Do we have any legal provisions, any legal measures through which we can take action against these trolls? Now, if you look at the Digital Personal Data Protection Act, which was recently passed by the parliament, this law is mandated basically to protect your data privacy, to provide for personal data protection. Recently, the government has come out with the draft rules and they are going to be notified very soon. So this law has not come into effect. It has been passed by the parliament, presidential assent has been given, it has become a law. But the Ministry of Electronics and IT has been drafting the rules which will provide for its implementation, and the draft rules will be notified very soon and it is going to take effect in some months. So there is a provision under the law, and the rules will definitely include a provision that will cover cyberbullying and doxing. Even the intermediaries, the social media intermediaries, have a responsibility. Platforms like X and other social media platforms where these abusive messages were posted, they have a responsibility to help the law enforcement authorities and the police to trace these trolls, the originators of these messages, so that legal action can be initiated against them. And as per the law, they can be arrested and punished as well. Because you can't issue rape and death threats just because you're anonymous online. Is that clear? Now, under the current existing provisions, if you look at Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, if you look at the IT Act, the Information Technology Act, these two existing laws, they have no specific provisions to deal with cyberbullying or doxing. Please make a note of this point. It's very, very important. You can expect a prelims or even mains question. Cyberbullying, doxing, they are not covered under Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, which is the current criminal code of India. It is not covered under the IT Act, the Information Technology Act. Understood? But it might be covered under the Digital Personal Data Protection Act, under which the new rules are being drafted and it's going to be notified very soon. Also, India is planning a new Digital India Act to replace the old IT Act. The Information Technology Act is outdated. It didn't account for the new age cyber crimes and cyber threats, such as doxing and cyberbullying. So IT Act is likely to be replaced by a new law, and the Ministry of Electronics and IT is working on the draft Digital India Act, which could also cover these provisions. Now, there is one very important court judgment that you need to remember in this regard. With regard to doxing, last year there was a landmark case, the Shavya Sharma case of 2024. In this landmark case, the Delhi High Court delivered a very important judgment. The Delhi High Court ruled in a case of doxing where an individual's personal information had been deliberately revealed with a malified intent. The Delhi High Court ruled in the Shavya Sharma case that this is a violation of right to privacy. And today, what is right to privacy? Right to privacy is a fundamental right guaranteed under Article 21 as declared by the Supreme Court under the K.S. Puttaswamy case in 2017. The Supreme Court of India delivered a landmark judgment few years ago in the K.S. Puttaswamy case, declaring right to privacy, which includes digital privacy, as a fundamental right under Article 21. So the Delhi High Court interpreted this and ruled that doxing is also a breach of your privacy, which means your fundamental right is being violated. That is why it is essential to plug the legal loopholes which are present. Currently, Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita and IT Act do not cover doxing and cyberbullying specifically. There are no explicit provisions for that. So, the draft rules of the Data Protection Act and the proposed Digital India Act should cover these criminal offenses and place responsibility on social media intermediaries as well, so that they can cooperate with law enforcement to trace these culprits so that they can be punished. It's very important to tackle online abuse and trolling. Understood? So now let's move on to the next topic. There are a couple of interesting articles as well in the column section of today's The Hindu newspaper. So let's look at this article that deals with electronic waste management. I'm sure you would know what is electronic waste or e-waste. As the world becomes more and more digital, adopting more and more digital technologies, we are generating massive quantities of e-waste, electronic waste, which is highly hazardous. As India moves towards a Viksit Bharat, as we digitize our economy, India today has become one of the largest generators of electronic waste in the world. Now, let me tell you some very interesting data. Please make a note of this. You can use this in your answers. There could be an essay on e-waste management. So please make a note of this point. In the last 6 years, India has seen a 151% increase in the e-waste generation in the country. Just in the last 6 years, e-waste generation has jumped by 151%. Every year, we are generating 1.7 million metric tons of electronic waste. Just look at the scale of this. Because this electronic waste is coming from the mobile phones, the laptops, the computers, all the electronic devices and gadgets, along with electronic machinery, which is used in the industry, the industrial equipment. At the end of their life cycle, they're all disposed, usually in an unscientific manner. They're not collected, processed in a formal scientific setup. So as a result, e-waste, which is hazardous, it ends up in landfills. It ends up being dumped out in the environment, and it is a serious environmental hazard, a serious threat for the environment and for human health. We are generating 1.7 million metric tons of e-waste per year. And if you look at the recycling of this e-waste, just 10% of it is being recycled in the formal sector. Most of its recycling is happening in the informal sector, which comprises of waste pickers, rag pickers, and informal facilities which are not even legally registered, which means they don't have the scientific knowledge to handle hazardous waste. The workers and rag pickers will get exposed to the hazardous chemicals and heavy metals, which will compromise their health. A study shows that rag pickers and workers in the informal recycling industry, they don't live beyond 27 to 30 years of age. Their life expectancy is hardly 27 years. They pass away so early in their life, in the prime of their youth, because for several years they have high exposure to hazardous, dangerous chemicals, heavy metals, and other substances. This is the situation in the country. So it's a pressing problem which needs to be addressed. Hardly 10% of the e-waste is being recycled, reprocessed in the formal industry. Majority of it is being handled in the informal sector. Large part of it is just being dumped. This is a huge environmental hazard. Now, what is the risk associated with e-waste? Let's understand that. There can be a prelims question on this as well. Electronic waste can be a source of heavy metals such as lead, mercury, even cyanide, cadmium. And I'm sure you would have studied in your general science that all these byproducts are highly hazardous. If they leach into the environment, they can pollute the water and the soil, and they can lead to deadly health conditions, which can cause death as well. It also releases sulfuric acid and other deadly hazardous chemicals and substances, which are corrosive, which are deadly to the environment, to the flora and fauna. It can contaminate our water bodies, groundwater table, the soil as well. And it is extremely hazardous for human health. There's no doubt about it. But please understand, electronic waste is actually a gold mine of resource. Don't think it's actually waste. There is plenty of resource which can be extracted from e-waste, because your electronic devices and gadgets, they comprise of some precious metals, including gold, silver, copper, and as well as other critical minerals and rare earth elements. I'm sure you're aware of this. So you can't let this go waste. You have to essentially collect them back. You have to recycle this. You have to process this and bring it back into the manufacturing cycle. This is what we call a circular economy. You need to create a circular economy, promote, recycle, reuse, because this is a precious resource. It is not just junk and waste which you can simply dispose. There is a need to formalize this industry, collect the precious metals. Honestly, India's e-waste is worth 80,000 crores, believe it or not. If we can handle the scientific management of 1.7 billion metric tons of e-waste every year, the value generated by extracting these metals would be 80,000 crore rupees. The government could generate 20,000 crore in taxes. I'm sure Nirmala Sitharaman would be very happy about this. If the government can formalize the e-waste processing industry, extract 80,000 crores worth of precious metals, government will reap the benefit through 20,000 crores in taxes, right? Which is what the finance minister wants. So this is something India has largely neglected. It's not that we don't have rules. We have sufficient rules in place. The problem is in enforcement. The problem is in supporting the industry. Now, if you look at the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, it has notified a set of rules, the e-waste management rules of 2022. It has been updated regularly. So currently, the e-waste management rules of 2022 is in effect, which is implemented by the Environment Ministry in collaboration with the Central Pollution Control Board. So under the e-waste management rules, there is a key concept which has been introduced known as extended producer responsibility. Have you heard about this? In fact, UPSC has already asked a prelims question on e-waste management rules and the concept of extended producer responsibility. Now, what do you mean by extended producer responsibility? It basically means that the government is placing the responsibility of hazardous products, of the entire life cycle of that product, on the producer of that hazardous waste, on the importers, on the sellers, basically the source where it is generated. They are responsible, they are accountable for implementing scientific waste management to manage the entire life cycle of a product. Now, see, for example, let's say I go and buy a new mobile phone, right? Now, where did the mobile phone come from? There must be some company in India which would have manufactured it, or there must be some distributor in India who has imported it from some country. There must be some sellers who are selling it to me, right? So these entities, the producers, the importers, the middlemen who are involved at the production level and the distribution and sale level, they are responsible for the entire life cycle of the product. Because after a few years, when my mobile phone becomes old, I may not know how to process this scientifically or where to dispose this. I may just dump it in a dumpster or sell it to someone, right? And eventually it'll end up in a landfill. So users can't be held accountable here. The customer can't be held accountable. It's the producers, the importers. They should be held accountable. So when someone wants to dispose the old gadgets, there should be a scientific method of collection, processing, so that we can extract the key metals and dispose and manage and handle the hazardous substances in a scientific and safe manner. They should also create an incentive system. They should incentivize the people, the customers, to come to their scientific collection centers where they can pay a certain amount if you return an old gadget, or they can give a discount on the next product you're going to buy. So this is called extended producer responsibility, where the producers, the importers, etc., they have to create a scientific waste management mechanism to handle the entire life cycle of the product, especially at the end of its life cycle, right? The user should know where to go and deposit these old gadgets, where to dispose the e-waste, so it can be scientifically collected, segregated, and processed in a formal facility with the right technology and the right tools, so we can extract the precious resources and we can deal with the hazardous pollutants. This is what is needed. So right now, under the e-waste management rules, there is a floor price which has been set for the formal e-waste processing industry. And this floor price is very, very low. It does not encourage the e-waste management industry, the producers, to invest enough in e-waste management, because the floor price set by the government is very low. It doesn't make for a profitable business. Think of it like MSP, which is given for agriculture. In agriculture, there is a minimum support price for our farmers, a guaranteed price at which farmers can sell the crops to the government, so that their livelihood is protected, their income is protected. Similarly, under e-waste management rules, there is something called a floor price, a minimum floor price that has been set for the industry, the scientific waste management industry. Now, right now, most companies are not interested to invest in this formal sector because they know that informal waste processing is cheaper for them. By using the unorganized waste handling industry, by relying upon the rag pickers and the informal sector, they are doing it in an unscientific manner because it is cheaper and more profitable for them. If the government increases the floor price, makes this business more viable and profitable, then we will see the flourishing of the formal waste processing industry. But some critics might argue that if the floor price is increased, then obviously the producer will pass on the cost, the increase in the cost, to the consumer. Maybe you will end up paying a upfront cost when you buy the mobile phone. Let's say the phone was 30,000. Now the producer will charge you maybe 32,000. He's collecting 2,000 rupees extra from you so that he can invest that 2,000 rupees in handling the end of life cycle of that phone. So consumers will end up paying the price. But a counter argument to this is that it's a price worth paying. Now, today, if I don't pay that 1,000, 2,000 rupees extra, tomorrow I will suffer, my family will suffer, my society will suffer because of the pollution caused by e-waste. Nobody will be spared by this hazardous pollution, right? This will affect the health of all the citizens in the country. So this is a cost we should be willing to pay if necessary. So that should not hold the government back from increasing the floor price so that waste processing of e-waste becomes a more viable, profitable business. That is how you can formalize the industry. You need more investments, better technology, better expertise to come in, right? That's how you can protect the informal workers and the unorganized sector. So this is what we learn from this important article. I hope all the concepts are clear. Now, coming to the next article, this again is very, very important for your prelims and mains. Recently, the 83rd session of International Maritime Organization was held. Just a few days ago, the IMO, International Maritime Organization, it's part of the UN system, by the way. It's one of the specialized agencies of the United Nations that governs and regulates global shipping. Now, please take up a homework, a small assignment from my side. Can you read more about IMO? It's a very important international organization. Prelims questions can come on this. Read about IMO, mention 5 important points about IMO in the comment section so it can help other students as well. That is your homework for today. After the class ends, read about IMO, identify 5 important facts, and mention that in the comments. So the 83rd session of IMO was held. and the focus was on the Marine Environment Protection Committee. Under the International Maritime Organization that regulates global shipping, there is a committee to protect the marine environment, Marine Environment Protection Committee. So the MEPC has adopted the MEPC 83 resolution, which provides for tackling of greenhouse gas emissions that is emanated from the shipping industry. I'm sure you know that global trade is dependent on maritime routes. It's primarily through shipping that global trade is carried out. Majority of the goods, they move around the world in a globalized economy through the maritime route, through these cargo ships, these container ships. So imagine the amount of fuel, fossil fuel that they must be consuming. Correct? So right now, the shipping industry is one of the high polluting industries in the world that contributes very significantly, not just to air pollution and marine pollution, but also to the emission of deadly greenhouse gases, which is contributing to global warming. If I tell you the data, you will be shocked. The shipping industry alone is currently responsible for 1 billion metric tons of greenhouse gas emissions per year. Every single year, the shipping industry in the world, the international shipping industry, not the domestic shipping industry, that is not accounted for. Domestic shipping within a country is not accounted. Only international shipping, if you take that into account, it is emitting 1 billion metric tons of greenhouse gases per year. This is 2.8% of the total greenhouse gas emissions happening in the world. Almost 3%. Now, if the shipping industry were to be a country, let's say hypothetically, we'll consider the shipping industry as a nation, then it would be the sixth largest greenhouse gas emitter. It would be the sixth largest greenhouse gas emitter between Germany and Japan. Germany would be the fifth largest. Japan would then become the seventh largest in that hypothetical case. And shipping industry would be your sixth largest greenhouse gas emitter. So that is why it was critical to tackle the greenhouse gas emissions that emanates from shipping industry. This is the first time that a global convention is being worked out for a specific industry to tackle greenhouse gas emissions and to adopt a net zero framework by 2050. I hope all of you understand what is net zero emissions. Net zero is a state when you essentially equate the carbon sequestration and removal of greenhouse gases with the quantum of greenhouse gases which is being released. Let's say due to economic activities, you're releasing 100 tons of CO2 and greenhouse gases. If you're able to sequester and remove the same equivalent from the atmosphere, then you attain a net zero situation. Because in overall terms, in net terms, there is no excess emission being released into the atmosphere. So around the world, economies are now racing towards a net zero target. Like India has declared a net zero target for 2070. Developed industrialized countries are chasing the net zero target by 2045, by 2050. So similarly, the International Maritime Organization is working with its members, 101 member countries, to impose a set of restrictions to bring down greenhouse gas emissions and to switch the ships to cleaner fuels so that by 2050, shipping industry can become net zero. So let's discuss what happened at the Marine Environment Protection Committee meeting, which was the 83rd session of the IMO. What was discussed? What is the framework which has been adopted? See, many participating countries, they suggested many solutions. European Union suggested a solution. Then various small island countries, least developed countries, which are most affected by climate change, they also proposed some ideas. But eventually, it was an idea that was proposed by India, built upon by Singapore, which has been adopted finally. India proposed a model which is like a carrot and stick policy. India suggested that those ships which reduce emissions by switching from fossil fuels to cleaner fuel. Now, what's a cleaner fuel for shipping industry? A cleaner fuel would be, a clean alternative would be green hydrogen. Brazil has been promoting methanol as well as a cleaner alternative for ships. Maybe you can even consider small modular nuclear reactors to power ships. Nuclear power ships can be built, right? So there are many different ways in which we can make the shipping industry clean. We can move them away from the dirty hydrocarbons, the carbon emitting fossil fuels, and make them adopt cleaner technologies, right? And also through better innovation, better research, with better development of engines and exhaust, you can bring down the current emissions as well, the emissions from fossil fuels. More importantly, you can switch to cleaner alternate fuels like green hydrogen, methanol, maybe nuclear energy as well. But this will require a lot of investments, right? So these are the options that are available. So India proposed an idea that those ships which will reduce emissions, which will switch to cleaner fuels, better technology to bring down the overall emissions, let us reward them. Let them be rewarded. Let there be an incentive for them. Those ships which do not bring down their emissions, which keep on using fossil fuels, which don't show any interest, let them be penalized. Let them pay a price for it so that it becomes a disincentive to discourage them. This was the model that India pushed. But Singapore proposed a parallel model. It was a bigger extension of India's model that was proposed. Singapore said, apart from rewarding those who perform well and punishing those who are not performing well, there should be a market based measure. A market based measure, or MBM, where the carbon credits can be traded. Just like a carbon market has been created for climate change convention under the Paris Agreement, right, through the Kyoto Protocol and Paris Agreement. On a similar line, Singapore has proposed a market model, a market mechanism, where those shipping companies and ships which are reducing emissions will earn carbon credits, and they can sell these carbon credits in the carbon market, in the trading market, to those ships and companies which are not meeting their standards. So they will have to purchase those targets, those credits, which means it will be a disincentive for them. So this market-based model is what Singapore has proposed, and it is this model that was adopted by the IMO at the Marine Environment Protection Committee. So both India and Singapore are claiming credit for it. India is saying it was our idea, Singapore is saying it is our idea. But in reality, it's actually a combination of the two. India basically proposed the initial idea, Singapore built on it and proposed the market mechanism for a carbon trading system in the shipping industry. So this is the first time ever for a specific industry, a carbon reduction arrangement is being worked out. But however, there are many more challenges to come. It may not be implemented very soon, because if you look at IMO, there are 101 member countries, and to bring this into effect, to bring this new shipping convention into effect, there is a need to amend the Marpol Convention. The annex of the Marpol Convention has to be amended. What is the Marpol Convention? The Marpol Convention of IMO deals with marine pollution. The pollution caused by the marine industry, the water and air pollution caused by the marine industry, is dealt with by the Marpol Convention. So the annex of the Marpol Convention has to be amended. And this amendment will require two-thirds support from the member countries, which means at least 67 countries will have to support this. But it appears to be difficult. Why? Because many countries are opposed to this formula. United States, especially under Donald Trump, has rejected Paris Agreement itself. It has quit the Paris Agreement. Trump administration doesn't believe in climate change. They think climate change is a conspiracy, right? They are climate skeptics. So obviously there is no question of US even accepting this. US has rejected this. So if the biggest power in the world has rejected it, that itself is a big challenge. And the major oil exporting countries like Saudi Arabia, the major oil exporters, they are also rejecting it because they're obviously concerned about their oil exports. If fossil fuel consumption goes down, right, it will hit their oil exports and their economy. So oil exporting nations like Saudi Arabia and major powers like US, they have rejected it. So it's quite difficult to get two-thirds support to get the amendment done. Now, let's say the amendment is still done somehow. India and other countries, let's say they all work together. European countries are more responsible, right? China also has shown the willingness to work, Singapore and others. So they will be able to bring two-thirds support. Let's say 67 countries and above, they will support it and they amend the Marpol Convention. But there is a provision where the implementation can be blocked if it is supported by one-third of the members. Definitely, US and Saudi can rally one-third support and block this implementation. If these one-third countries account for more than 50% of global tonnage in terms of the weight of the container ships, right? So these one-third countries can block it. Because see, there are many shipping and maritime powers which are concerned about the convention. For example, Greece, Cyprus. These are major maritime powers, as in most of the commercial ships that you have today, they all carry a Greece flag or a Cyprus flag. They're owned by Greece companies or companies based out of Cyprus. So many such countries would be hit, and they are not happy with this new treaty. They don't want to incur that extra cost, right? So that is why there's a lot of opposition as well. So even if it is amended and eventually passed, it may not be implemented because it can be blocked by the members with one-third support. Now, coming to my last point here, a very important point. Has this convention considered the principle of CBDR? What is CBDR? This is a pivotal principle which was worked out under the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, which has been integral to the Kyoto Protocol of 1997, the first ever climate change agreement. It has been a guiding principle for the Paris Agreement as well. What is CBDR? Common but differentiated responsibilities. It stands for common but differentiated responsibilities. This principle was championed by the developing, underdeveloped countries like India, China, African countries, the global south. They championed the principle of CBDR. It basically means that fighting climate change is a common responsibility of every country in the world. Every country is in this together. Every country has to contribute to fight climate change. But however, the responsibility they take up to decarbonize their economy, to switch to cleaner energy, this will be differentiated based on respective capabilities. RC stands for respective capabilities. It is dependent on historical emissions because many countries have benefited because they had no restriction on their emissions. They freely burnt fossil fuels for decades, and that's how they became developed and industrialized. That's how they solved their social and economic problems. To take US, Europe, and other industrialized nations, they freely burnt fossil fuels for almost 2 centuries, right? Polluting the world and releasing greenhouse gases. That's how they grew their economy, improved their administration, solved their socio-economic problems, uplifted their people. But there are many countries in the global south, developing, emerging economies, underdeveloped countries, small island nations, least developed countries. They never had the opportunity to develop as they didn't have the technology, they did not industrialize. So that is why whatever responsibility is taken up by a country, it should be based on historical responsibility. Historical emissions has to be accounted for. So those who contributed more to emissions before, they have to take a higher burden, higher responsibility because they have more capability. Industrialized developed countries have the technology, they have the money. They can invest that in adaptation mitigation measures. That is the whole idea behind CBDR or CBDR RC. But however, this principle has been diluted over the years. For example, in Kyoto Protocol, CBDR was the foundational principle. But in Paris Agreement, it has been diluted. So now if you look at the Maritime Environment Protection Committee, which has adopted this convention, the Shipping Greenhouse Gas Emission Convention, it has further diluted this principle. Though there is a talk of higher responsibility being taken by developed nations first, where they will try to achieve the target earlier, giving a pace or a window for developing underdeveloped countries. This has been discussed, but it has not been completely integrated into the new convention which has been adopted. So from India's point of view, adopting this convention for shipping industry will increase the cost. Right now, India incurs around $400 million on shipping fuel every year. This cost might increase by around $108 million. The shipping industry might end up spending around $500 million plus. But this is a price worth paying because the environmental benefits would be much higher. That's why India is already making a transition in shipping fuel. We are pushing for the adoption of green hydrogen. Did you know across the major ports of India, major companies like Adani Ports or Reliance Industries and other giant companies, they are setting up green hydrogen facilities and tankers and container shipments so that they can readily provide green hydrogen as an alternate clean fuel for the ships that are headed out from India, the international ships that go out from India. So India is well poised to adopt this. Of course, it will require some investment, some changes, but in the long run, it can be good. Now, let's see whether it will be implemented, whether it will be brought into force or not. Because as I said, there's a lot of opposition as well by many countries. So this is a very, very important topic for your prelims and mains. Coming to the next article here, the last big article, and then we go to the prelim section. As I told you today, we have a lot of articles. You can't miss any of them. China had recently blocked the export of a very important mineral, that is germanium. As the trade war with US escalated, China placed an export restriction on the export of key minerals such as germanium and even gallium, etc. Now, this ban by China started affecting India as well because Indian companies are 100% dependent on China supplied germanium. We have a 100% import dependency. The entire germanium that is imported by Indian companies comes from China through Chinese supply chains. So China's export restriction on US and other Western governments affected Indian imports as well. And this issue has been raised diplomatically. The Indian embassy in Beijing has brought up this concern of the Indian industry with the Chinese government, urging China to remove the export restriction on germanium. Now, why is germanium critical? You need to know the applications. The germanium is not a rare earth element. Please remember this. If you look at the rare earths list, there are 17 minerals, but germanium is not part of it. Don't think it's a rare earth element. It is not. Okay, in rare earth list, there is only 17 minerals listed, and germanium is not part of it. But still, germanium is critical in the industry. You can consider it as a critical mineral because it is widely used in semiconductor manufacturing. It is used to manufacture OFC cables, optical fiber cables, which is critical for high speed communication. It is also used in manufacturing solar panels. Is that clear? So germanium is this key mineral. It's not a rare earth element, but it's a critical mineral which finds a key application in semiconductor industry, in solar panel industry, and as well as in optical fiber industry. And there is no alternative to germanium. Germanium is necessary for these industries. So Indian companies which produce these goods, they have been importing Chinese germanium through third countries like United Arab Emirates. The cost of import has gone up. The export restriction by China has hurt Indian companies. That's why India has brought this up diplomatically, raised the issue with China, asking for an exemption to remove the export ban. Understood? So please note this point down. It can be very important. Now we come to the prelim section. Last four articles, very small topics. Let's wrap it up quickly. Even today, we have two protected areas in news. Remember, yesterday also, there were two protected areas we discussed. We spoke about Annamalai Tiger Reserve in Tamil Nadu, Ranthambore Tiger Reserve in Rajasthan. So today we have the Tadoba Andhari Tiger Reserve in Maharashtra. Again, there has been a tragic incident of man-animal conflict. A tiger has mauled a woman to death. A native indigenous community woman, right, who was venturing in the forest area collecting tendu leaves. Tendu leaves are basically tobacco leaves. It is a minor forest produce. It is used in making BDs, right? So this is a basic livelihood, occupation for indigenous tribes. So when a woman was collecting tendu leaves in the forest area, which is a minor forest produce, she has been attacked and mauled by a tiger. So that is the case of man-animal conflict. And in the same region, 5 killings have happened in the last 3 days. 5 people have been killed, most likely by the same tiger. So it could be possibly a man-eating tiger. So this raises the issue of man-animal conflict, which is a separate issue altogether. But now for prelims, let's focus on the Tadoba Andhari Tiger Reserve. Let's focus on key facts which can be important for the prelims. So it is located in Maharashtra. I think most of you would know this. It's located in the Chandrapur district of Maharashtra. There are some important water bodies inside this protected area. The Kolsa Lake and the Andhari River. They are important water sources for the animals that are present in this protected area. It's a tiger reserve under Project Tiger, and it has a very healthy tiger population in central India. So, if you look at the vegetation here, it has southern tropical dry deciduous forest. The vegetation found here is basically tropical dry deciduous forest, and it is home to several threatened species of animals, birds, reptiles. Crocodiles are found over here in these water bodies, the mugger crocodile. Apart from the tiger, leopards, sloth bears, and various mammals, they are found in large numbers in this protected area. Please make a note of the biodiversity which is present here, and also note down that the indigenous Gondi people, they inhabit the forest area. Understood? They have been settled in the buffer zone. The Gondi people, they are the native community found in the vicinity of the Tadoba Andhari Tiger Reserve. Next, on another page, there's an article related to Seshachalam Biosphere Reserve in Andhra Pradesh. A few trekkers, they had gone on an illegal trek in a protected area, in a biosphere reserve. Because see, in biosphere reserves, in tiger reserves, there is an area where human activity is completely restricted and prohibited. We call it the core zone. The core habitat is completely sealed off by the authorities to protect the biodiversity. So all human activities might be prohibited. And even if there are tribal settlements in the core habitat, they will be relocated and resettled in the buffer zone. Understood? So in the core area, human activities are not allowed in tiger reserves, in biosphere reserves. So in Andhra Pradesh, in the Seshachalam Biosphere Reserve, a group of travelers, they went on a trek, they camped as well in a core area. The forest department officials spotted them, they have detained them, and they are now levying a penalty on them. It's a punishable offense. So please understand what is important about Seshachalam Biosphere Reserve. This was the first biosphere reserve of Andhra Pradesh, located in the Eastern Ghats, spread across Chittoor and Kadapa district, and it is designated under UNESCO's Man and Biosphere program. So it's one of the 18 biosphere reserves in the country, and it is listed as part of the UNESCO Man and Biosphere program. So according to this UNESCO model of conservation, when biosphere reserves are set up, the core buffer strategy of conservation is implemented. In a biosphere reserve, a core habitat is identified where most human activities are restricted and prohibited unless it is explicitly permitted, right? And around the core area, there will be a buffer zone where some limited human activities will be allowed. So this model of conservation is called the core buffer model of conservation. So that's why such human activities are not allowed. They are restricted and prohibited. That's why these trekkers have been detained and they are being penalized. So Seshachalam Biosphere Reserve is also a rich biodiversity hotspot. It is home to the endangered golden gecko and mammals like the giant squirrels, the slender loris, and other animals and birds, etc. Please make a note of this point as well. Next, on page 14, we have a big development coming from the West Asia region. Kurdish insurgency is almost coming to an end. And this is big news. Very, very important development. UPSC has already asked a prelims question based on the Kurd community. So, who are the Kurds? The Kurds are a native ethnic group found in parts of Turkey, in southern and eastern Turkey, also found in parts of Syria, Iraq, and parts of Iran. The Kurds have a long standing issue with the government of Turkey or Turkey. They have been fighting an insurgent war against Turkey, trying to liberate these Kurd areas to form their own country, to form their own country known as Kurdistan. So Turkey has branded the Kurdish militants as terrorists. And all Turkey's allies, the NATO allies, United States, they've all designated these Kurdish groups as terrorist organizations. The most prominent Kurdish militia happens to be the PKK, the Kurdistan Workers' Party. The PKK stands for Kurdistan Workers' Party in the Kurdish language. It was founded by Abdullah Öcalan nearly 4 decades ago, when the Kurdish insurgency started in 1980s. So it's one of the oldest insurgencies which has lasted. The movement started around 1980s, led by its leader Abdullah Öcalan. But he was arrested by the Turkish authorities in 1999. So for more than 25 years, the leader of PKK has been in a Turkish jail. But the insurgent movement continued. Now, recently, Abdullah Öcalan issued a statement from jail. From jail, he gave a call to the community and his group, the PKK, to surrender and lay down their arms and weapons and end the Kurdish insurgency in return for a peace agreement from the Turkish government. So, based on the call given by its leader, now the PKK has agreed to end the insurgency and the group is being disbanded. They are basically looking to surrender, but of course, they are looking for a favorable agreement. They have few conditions. They want certain commitments from the Turkish government that they'll not be targeted, they'll not be abused and oppressed, their rights will be protected. So they're looking for certain guarantees from the Turkish government, and they've announced their decision to completely disband this outfit. But will this end Kurdish insurgency altogether? The answer is no. Why? Because apart from PKK, there are other Kurdish militias which are operating in the region. For example, in neighboring Syria, there is another Kurdish group called YPG, a Kurdish militia which was supported by the previous Syrian regime under former President Bashar al-Assad. That is why Turkey interfered in Syria. That is why Turkey sponsored the recent regime change in Syria. So radical groups like the HTS, which is aligned with jihadist ideology, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, along with Syrian rebels, the Syrian National Army, they were backed by Turkey's intelligence agencies, supported by them, funded by them, armed by them, and they managed to topple the Syrian government. Bashar al-Assad's regime was toppled, and now HTS has largely occupied the regime in Syria, along with a combination of rebels and radical groups. So in Syria, there is a Kurdish area where autonomy had been given by Assad, and there is a militant group here called YPG, which now is feeling threatened and concerned. Now, please understand, it's the same Kurdish militias which had fought with the US, with the Central Intelligence Agency, when they fought against Islamic State. Few years ago, especially from 2015 to 2018, when the US fought a war against ISIS in Syria and Iraq, it was Kurdish militias like PKK, YPG, which helped the US intelligence agencies and special forces to target ISIS and weaken ISIS. They have played a very important role in bringing ISIS down. Understood? But now PKK is disbanding itself, looking for a peace deal with Turkey. But however, there are other Kurdish insurgents who are still operating and present, such as YPG in Syria. Coming to the last article, Taiwan has conducted the first ever live drill of an American weapon system, one of the most advanced rocket systems known as the HIMARS, High Mobility Artillery Rocket System. It is manufactured by Lockheed Martin, a major defense manufacturer in the US, and HIMARS is operated by many foreign armies and other countries as well. For example, recently, the US supplied HIMARS rockets to Ukraine to help Ukraine withstand the Russian invasion and to launch attacks against Russian forces which are invading into Ukraine. So HIMARS system has always been in the news. It stands for High Mobile or High Mobility Artillery Rocket System. So essentially, it's a type of artillery meant primarily for ground targets. And it's highly mobile. It's mounted on a truck. So it can launch a barrage of rockets, and it could be very effective in preventing a ground invasion If at all there is a ground invasion happening, right? And if you can deploy the HIMARS on a large scale, right, you can target the incoming troops and decimate the enemy which is trying to invade your territory. So Ukraine has procured it, used it in the battlefield. Many other American allies have the HIMARS system. Now Taiwan also has started receiving it because of the threat it faces from China. So it has conducted the first ever live drill of this American weapon system. So with this, I bring my discussion to an end. We have covered 11 articles in complete detail with a comprehensive analysis. I hope you guys have understood everything. If you like the session, do let me know in the comments, press the like button, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. That is it. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.